The desert sun hung low, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Route 17, where the air shimmered with heat and the faint scent of sagebrush. In a dusty pull-off near the old trading post, a group of rough-edged travelers had gathered. Truckers nursing lukewarm coffee, a family squeezed into a beat-up sedan, and at the center, a lone biker named Ethan Hale, his leather jacket scarred from years of road-worn battles. Ethan's motorcycle, a gleaming black Harley with custom pipes that growled like a distant thunder, stood propped on its kickstand. He was mid-conversation with a fellow rider, sharing stories of routes long forgotten when a small figure caught his eye. A boy, no older than 10, wide-eyed and fidgeting near the edge of the lot. The boy, Lucas, had wandered from his parents' car, drawn by the rumble of engines and the promise of adventure in this forgotten stretch of highway. His sneakers kicked up pebbles as he circled the bikes, curiosity overriding the warnings his mother had given. But what he saw next froze him in place. Behind Ethan's Harley, partially hidden by a rusted barrel, a man in a faded flannel shirt crouched low, his hands working furtively at the rear wheel. With a wrench glinting in the fading light, he was loosening the lug nuts, one twist at a time, deliberate and silent. The bolts loosened with a soft metallic whisper, the wheel wobbling slightly under the strain. Lucas's heart pounded. He knew enough from his dad's garage tinkering to recognize sabotage. This wasn't play. This was malice, aimed at sending the biker into a deadly spin down the endless road. Fear gripped Lucas, but something fiercer rose in his chest, a spark of courage born from stories his grandfather told of standing up for what's right. The man's face twisted in concentration, oblivious to the boy, as he pocketed the wrench and slipped toward a waiting pickup truck idling in the shadows. Lucas's mouth went dry, the world narrowing to the precarious wheel and the biker laughing just feet away. If he stayed silent, the crash would come at full throttle, metal twisting, lives shattered on the blacktop. With a deep breath that tasted of dust and diesel, Lucas cupped his hands and yelled, "Hey, stop, he's messing with your bike!" The shout sliced through the murmurs like a blade. Ethan whipped around, his weathered face hardening as he strode toward his Harley. The other travelers paused, heads turning, the air thickening with unspoken tension. Lucas pointed, his small finger trembling but unwavering. "That guy, he's loosening the bolts. I saw him." The man in flannel froze midway to his truck, eyes darting like a cornered animal before he bolted for the door. Ethan lunged forward, his boots pounding the gravel, but the truck peeled out in a spray of dirt, tires screeching as it vanished into the haze. Ethan knelt by the wheel, his calloused fingers testing the nuts. Loose, dangerously so. One more mile, one sharp turn, and it would have been over. He looked up at the boy, his blue eyes meeting Lucas's frightened gaze. "You just saved my life, kid," Ethan said. His voice gravelly but steady, carrying the weight of a man who'd stared down worse odds. The boy's parents rushed over then, pulling Lucas into a hug, their faces pale with relief and scolding. But Ethan placed a hand on the father's shoulder, his grip firm. That yell. It wasn't just luck. It's the kind of honor that sticks. In that moment, amid the swirling dust and the distant hum of semis, a promise flickered to life. One that would bind a lone biker to a scared child, pulling Ethan back into a world he'd tried to leave behind. As the sun dipped lower, painting the horizon in fiery oranges, Ethan straightened, wiping grease from his hands on a rag. He wasn't just any rider. Scars ran deeper than the tattoos snaking up his arms, remnants of a war that had claimed his brother, leaving Ethan with a vow whispered over a grave: protect the innocent, no matter the cost. He'd drifted since, running with the Iron Oath crew, a band of veterans who'd forged their own code on the back roads. But this sabotage, it smelled of something bigger, a grudge from shadows he'd outrun. The boy's cry had reignited that old fire, a call he couldn't ignore. Lucas watched as Ethan tightened the bolts with practiced ease, the metallic clinks echoing like judgments. The boy's mind raced. Why would someone do that? His parents bundled him back to the car, but not before Ethan crouched to his level. "What's your name, hero?" "Lucas," the boy mumbled, cheeks flushing. "Well, Lucas, you got guts. Ever think about riding with the real deal someday?" A grin cracked Ethan's stoic facade, and Lucas nodded, the fear ebbing into something like awe. The family drove off, tail lights fading, but Ethan lingered, phone in hand, dialing a number etched in his memory. By nightfall, as stars pierced the velvet sky, Ethan's crew assembled at a roadside diner 20 miles down. Word spread like wildfire through their encrypted channels, saboteurs on the prowl, targeting their kind. Noah, the grizzled sergeant-at-arms with a limp from the same war that haunted Ethan, clapped his shoulder. "You pulling us in for a kid's hunch?" Ethan's jaw set. "Not a hunch, a debt. That boy yelled when no one else would. We ride for him now." The diner filled with the low rumble of engines idling outside, leather vests emblazoned with the Iron Oath emblem, a clenched fist over a broken chain. They weren't outlaws. They were guardians, bound by promises that outlasted bullets and betrayals. The next dawn broke with a chorus of Harleys firing up, exhaust curling like smoke signals. Ethan led the pack. Lucas's face burned into his mind, a reminder that redemption wasn't found in isolation, but in the quiet acts that echoed loudest. But as they rolled out, a shadow trailed from the rear view, the pickup from the pull-off, circling like a vulture. Who was the saboteur? A rival crew, corrupt locals shaking down the roads. Ethan gunned the throttle, the wind whipping his face, carrying whispers of the past. His brother's voice, faint but insistent, "Keep the oath." For the boy who'd seen the truth and spoken it, Ethan would unravel the threat, 1 mile at a time. The convoy stretched into the distance, a steel serpent cutting through the dawn. In the heart of it, Ethan felt the weight lift, replaced by purpose. Little did he know, Lucas's yell had cracked open a conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons. Crooked officials turning a blind eye to smuggling rings, using the open roads as their playground. But for now, the road called, and the Iron Oath answered. Honor wasn't given. It was claimed, bolt by bolt, shout by shout. And in the vast expanse, where promises were the only currency that mattered, Ethan Hale rode toward whatever storm awaited. The roar of engines faded into a steady thunder as the Iron Oath convoy carved through the early morning light, the desert unfolding like a vast, unforgiving canvas. Ethan Hale led the pack, his Harley slicing the wind, the vibration humming through his bones like an old, familiar ache. Behind him, 20 riders strong, veterans with eyes that had seen too much and hearts scarred by the same, formed a tight wedge, their leathers creaking in rhythm with the pistons. Noah rode shotgun on Ethan's flank, his silver beard whipping in the breeze, a silent sentinel who'd pulled Ethan from the rubble in a forgotten desert skirmish years back. The air carried the sharp tang of exhaust, mixed with the earthy bite of creosote bushes lining the highway. Every mile marker a reminder that the road forgave nothing. Ethan's mind replayed the pull-off scene in flashes, the boy's wide eyes, the glint of that wrench, the truck vanishing into dust. Lucas's yell had been a lifeline, yanking him from the numb drift he'd called peace. But peace was alive for men like him. Promises lingered like ghosts, and this one felt tied to the oath he'd sworn over his brother's fresh earth, to shield the vulnerable from the wolves that prowled in plain sight. He glanced in his mirror, spotting the faint outline of that pickup again, hugging the horizon like a bad memory, not imagination. It was tailing them, deliberate, weaving through sparse traffic with the patience of a hunter, miles blurred into the next hour, the sun climbing to bake the asphalt, turning it into a shimmering ribbon. They pulled into a ghost town, outskirts, a cluster of weathered shacks and a single gas station where pumps rusted under faded signs. Ethan signaled a stop, the convoy halting in a gravel lot that crunched under tires. Riders dismounted, stretching limbs stiff from the ride, murmurs rising like steam. Noah lit a cigarette, the flame flickering against his wind-burned face. "That shadow's no coincidence, brother. Smells like the old roots. Smugglers marking territory." Ethan nodded, wiping sweat from his brow with a forearm tattooed in faded ink. A fist clutching a chain link. The Iron Oath's mark of unbreakable bonds. He'd walked away from the crew after his brother's death, the guilt too heavy, the fights too raw. But Lucas's act had stirred it all up. A kid, barely taller than a saddlebag, choosing truth over silence. It mirrored the boy Ethan had failed to save overseas, the one whose cry for help drowned in gunfire. Redemption wasn't a destination. It was this: gathering the pack for a debt unpaid. As the group refueled, a local edged out from the station's shadow, an older man in oil-stained overalls, his face etched with lines from too many sunsets. He eyed the bikes warily, then approached Ethan with a limp that spoke of hard falls. "You Iron Oath? Heard your rumble from a mile off." His voice was gravel, laced with caution. Ethan met his gaze, sensing the unspoken plea. "Name's Harlan. Run this pump since the war. Seen things on these roads. Trucks hauling shadows at night. Folks disappearing if they ask questions." He glanced over his shoulder, as if the words might summon trouble. "That sabotage you dodged ain't random. Word is, some suits up in the county are turning blind eyes to runners moving contraband. They pay off locals to rough up anyone sniffing too close. Bikers like you. You're easy targets." The revelation hung heavy, the pump's drip echoing like a countdown. Noah stubbed his smoke, his limp more pronounced as he stepped forward. "Suits? Like badges or boardrooms?" Harlan spat into the dust. "Both. Sheriff's got a new deputy, slick as oil, always circling these stretches. Lost a rider last month. Wheel gave out on a curve. Official word accident, but whispers say bolts were tampered." Ethan's jaw tightened, the pieces slotting like gears in a trap. The pickup, the wrench. It wasn't personal, it was systematic. A web preying on the open road where law twisted into leverage. Back on the bikes, the convoy pushed harder, the tail growing bolder, closing the gap under the relentless sun. Ethan felt the pull of the promise deepening, not just to Lucas, but to every soul the oath had sworn to guard. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from an unknown number. "Kid saw too much. Back off, or next one's permanent." The words chilled him, colder than the desert night. Who knew about the boy? The family had driven off unscathed. But now... Ethan gunned the engine, signaling Noah with a fist raised high. The oath's call to vigilance. They veered onto a side road, cutting through canyons, where red rock walls rose like silent judges, the air cooling with altitude. Dust devils danced ahead, swirling secrets into the sky. In the rear, the pickup surged, its grill a snarling maw. A shot cracked, muffled, from a suppressed barrel, pinging off a fender. Chaos erupted, riders swerving, engines bellowing as they formed a protective wall around Ethan. Noah shouted over the din, "Flank 'em! Don't let 'em scatter!" Bullets whined, but the oath held, their formation a testament to bonds forged in fire. Ex-Marines, mechanics, wanderers who'd chosen loyalty over loneliness. Ethan broke free, accelerating into a narrow pass where boulders flanked the path like sentinels. The pickup barreled after, its driver, a shadowed figure with the flannel from the pull-off, leaning out with grim intent. The chase twisted through the defile, tires screaming on loose shale, the scent of scorched rubber invading the air. Ethan's mind raced faster than his bike. For Lucas, for the brother he'd lost, for the honor that demanded he end this without becoming the monster he fought. He spotted a fork ahead, a dry wash dropping sharp. Feinting left, he veered right, the Harley leaping gravel as the truck overshot, slamming brakes too late. The vehicle fishtailed, nose dipping into the wash, metal groaning as it wedged against rocks. Ethan circled back, crew fanning out, weapons drawn but steady. No rash blood, only justice served cold. The driver stumbled out, hands raised, face pale under the flannel. "Wasn't me. Hired hand. They said scare you off the routes." His eyes darted to the horizon, where more dust hinted at reinforcements. Noah zip-tied him, the click final as a verdict. "Who's they?" Ethan demanded, voice low thunder. The man swallowed dust. "Deputy's crew, shaking down halls for cuts. Your kind interferes." As the sun crested noon, casting stark shadows, Ethan stared at the captive, the weight of conspiracy settling like chains. This wasn't a lone wolf, it was a pack, corrupting the very roads they rode for freedom. The boy's yell had unraveled the first thread, but pulling it risked everything, the oath, his soul. The fragile peace Lucas had unknowingly gifted. Yet turning back, that would break the promise etched in his scars. With the crew securing the scene, Ethan mounted up, the engine's growl a vow renewed. The road ahead twisted darker, but so did their resolve. Family chosen, honor claimed, one shadowed mile at a time. The canyon's red walls loomed like ancient guardians, their jagged edges slicing the midday sun into fractured beams that danced across the wedged pickup. Dust settled in slow veils, carrying the acrid bite of overheated brakes and the faint metallic tang of fear sweat from the captured man. Ethan Hale dismounted his Harley with a deliberate creak of leather, his boots grinding into the shale as he approached the wreck. The driver's hands trembled in the zip ties, his flannel shirt torn at the collar, revealing a glimpse of a cheap silver chain. Nothing like the heavy oaths etched into Ethan's skin. Noah flanked him, shotgun slung low, his limp echoing softly with each step, a rhythm born from shrapnel long buried. "You got a name, or just a paycheck?" Ethan asked, his voice a low rumble that blended with the distant echo of a hawk's cry overhead. The man averted his eyes, jaw working like he was chewing gravel. "Call me Jax. Ain't my fight, just wheels for hire. They said mess with the biker, make him think twice about the routes." He nodded toward the horizon, where the dust plume from unseen reinforcements hung like a threat unspoken. Ethan's gaze followed, the air thick with the dry whisper of wind through scrub oak. This wasn't random road rage, it was a calculated shove, pushing guardians like the Iron Oath off paths where smugglers slithered unchecked. Noah hauled Jax to his feet, the zip ties biting into wrists marked by old scars, reminders of choices that led here. "Deputy's crew, you said. Spill it, or the canyon keeps you." The crew formed a loose circle, engines ticking cool in the background, their presence a wall of shadowed leathers and steady stares. Jax's breath hitched, the confession spilling out in fragments. Late-night meets at the county line, envelopes thick with cash-changing hands under flickering diner signs. The deputy, a man named Harlan's Warning had only hinted at, slick-talking newcomer with a badge that bought silence, coordinated the hits. Bikers, truckers, anyone too nosy about the midnight hauls of shadowed cargo. "It's bigger than roads," Jax muttered, eyes flicking to Ethan. "Connections up the chain. They know about the kid who saw." Ethan's blood iced over, the words landing like a punch to an old wound. Lucas, the boy whose yell had shattered the silence, pulling Ethan from his solitary drift. How deep did the eyes reach? The family had vanished into the highway's maw, but now this shadow touched them. He pulled out his phone, the screen's glow harsh against the canyon's rust tones, and fired off a encrypted ping to a contact in the network. "Check on a sedan, plates from the pull-off, boy named Lucas." The reply buzzed quick. "Safe for now, holed up in a roadside motel 2 counties over." But the threat lingered, a promise twisted into peril. As the crew secured Jax in the shade of a boulder, water flask pressed to his lips, no more than necessity demanded, Ethan paced the wash's edge, the ground crunching underfoot like brittle bones. His mind reeled back to the graveside vow, the earth still soft under his knees, brother's dog tags heavy in his palm, protect the line between right and forgotten. The iron oath had been that line once. A family forged in foxholes and back-alley brawls, ex-soldiers who'd traded uniforms for vests, bullets for brotherhood, but loss had fractured it. Ethan walking away, the ghosts too loud. Lucas's cry had mended the first crack, drawing them here into this snare. A low rumble stirred the air, growing from a purr to a growl as 3 more pickups crested the canyon rim, tires kicking up ochre clouds that choked the sky. The deputy's reinforcements, 4 men piling out, armed with intent but no surprise. Their leader, broad-shouldered in a crisp uniform that screamed bought loyalty, stepped forward, badge glinting like false gold. "This road's under jurisdiction," he barked, voice carrying the false authority of a man who'd sold his honor for scraps. "Hand over the detainee. You're interfering." Ethan stood unmoving, the wind tugging at his jacket, carrying the faint scent of sage and impending storm. Noah shifted beside him, the crew fanning out without a word, silent as the oaths that bound them. "Interfering?" Ethan echoed, his tone even, laced with the steel of a man who'd faced worse bluffs. "Like loosening bolts on innocence? Or tailing families?" The deputy's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease betraying the facade. Jax, from his perch, let out a hoarse laugh. "Told you, they see everything." Tension coiled like a spring, the canyon amplifying every shift of boot on stone, every breath drawn sharp. The deputy's men advanced, hands hovering near holsters, but the oath held ground, a phalanx of quiet resolve. No drawn guns, no rash moves, just the unyielding wall of men who'd chosen loyalty over fear. Ethan stepped closer, close enough to smell the man's cheap cologne masking sweat. "This ends clean. Call off your dogs. Face the truth you buried. For the kid who spoke up, for every promise you broke." The deputy hesitated, the weight of exposed rot pressing in, his allies exchanging glances that spoke of doubts sown deep. In that suspended breath, a radio crackled from the deputy's belt, static-laced urgency from the station. Incoming report, witnesses from the pull-off talking, feds sniffing the halls. The man's face paled, the bluff crumbling like dry adobe. He signaled retreat, the pickups reversing with hurried spins, dust devils chasing their tails. Jax slumped, relief mixing with resignation. "You got no idea the nest you're kicking." As the echoes faded, Ethan turned to his crew, the sun dipping toward the canyon's teeth, casting long shadows that merged man and machine. They'd bought time, unraveled a thread, but the web tightened. Lucas's safety, now the oath's vigil, the conspiracy's roots delving into corrupt veins that poisoned the land. Mounting up, engines igniting in a symphony of restrained power, Ethan felt the pull stronger. Redemption rode tandem with risk, honor a flame that warmed and burned. The convoy reformed, snaking out of the defile, the road ahead a ribbon of uncertainty. For the boy who'd yelled truth into silence, they'd chase the shadows until justice dawned, 1 ethical mile at a time. Noah rode close, their bike sinking in the fading light, the air cooling with the promise of night. "We loop back for the kids' folks," he called over the wind. Ethan nodded, resolve hardening like tempered steel. And more, the oath doesn't half-step. Stars began to prick the twilight, witnesses to vows renewed as the thunder of their passage rolled on, family chosen, secrets unraveling, the boy's courage lighting the way through moral dusk. The twilight deepened into a bruised indigo as the Iron Oath convoy emerged from the canyon's grip, engines purring with restrained fury against the cooling air. Ethan Hale led the wedge, his Harley's headlight cutting a silver path through the gathering dusk, the vibration thrumming up his arms like a pulse of unfinished business. Behind him, The riders strung out in disciplined formation, Noah's bike a steady shadow on his left, the others fanning like protective wings, their exhaust trails weaving faint ghosts in the rear view. The desert had traded its midday blaze for a crisp bite, sagebrush whispering secrets to the wind, and the distant howl of a coyote underscoring the isolation of Route 17's forgotten bends. Ethan's thoughts churned with the deputy's retreat, the crackle of that radio a crack in the facade of power. Jax's words echoed. The nest, vast and venomous, with tendrils snaking into places where oaths like theirs were meant to stand guard. Lucas, the boy's name a talisman now, had ignited this, his yell a spark that refused to gutter out. Ethan glanced at his phone clipped to the handlebars. The screen dark but heavy, with the earlier ping confirming the family's motel hideout. Safe for the moment. But moments were fragile as cracked asphalt, and the oath's code demanded more than vigilance. It required action, the quiet kind that rebuilt what corruption tore down. They pushed another 20 miles. The road narrowing into a ribbon flanked by jagged outcrops that loomed like silent jurors. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses to the human fray below. Noah pulled alongside at a straightaway, his voice cutting through the wind's rush. That deputy's scrambling now. Feds on the scent means cracks in their wall. But Jax wasn't lying. This runs deep. We circling back tonight. Ethan's nod was firm, the leather of his glove creaking as he gripped the throttle. Dawn, get eyes on the motel first. No loose ends for the boy. The crew's comms buzzed softly with affirmatives, a network of bonds tighter than blood, forged in the crucible of shared scars and unbreakable words. Pulling into a secluded overlook, the convoy halted under a canopy of ancient junipers, their needles rustling like hushed counsel. Boots hit gravel, the air alive with the tick of cooling metal, and the faint crackle of a fire Noah kindled in a ring of stones, flames licking at dry twigs, casting flickering gold on weathered faces. Riders gathered, passing a thermos of black coffee that steamed in the chill, its bitter aroma mingling with the earth's damp undertone. Ethan leaned against his bike, arms crossed, the iron oath patch on his vest catching the firelight, a fist over shattered links, symbol of chains they'd chosen to break. Talk turned low, voices weaving through the night like threads in a tapestry of resolve. A younger rider, Samuel, with a fresh shave and eyes still sharp from civilian life, broke the circle's edge. That kid, Lucas, he's why we're here, right? One shout and we're knee-deep in this mess. Murmurs rippled, but Ethan raised a hand, his gaze steady as the stars. Not a mess, a reckoning. He saw wrong and called it out when silence would have been easier. We owe him the same. Truth over shadows. Samuel nodded, the fire's glow softening the doubt in his stance. These men weren't strangers to loss. Each carried ghosts of battles past, promises whispered in foxholes or over hospital beds. The oath was their anchor, a family elected through fire, where loyalty wasn't spoken but lived, mile by unforgiving mile. As embers died to glow, Ethan stepped away, phone in hand, dialing the motel's line from the ping's coordinates. The receiver clicked after 3 rings, a weary voice answering, Lucas's father, tension threading his words like barbed wire. Hale, you kept your word. Checking in? Ethan's reply was gravel steady. Roads are clear your way, but stay put till morning. We've got your back. A pause, then gratitude thick as the night. That boy's asleep, dreaming of bikes now, thanks to you. Hanging up, Ethan felt the vow settle deeper, a weight that grounded rather than crushed. Redemption wasn't grand gestures. It was this, threads of honor pulling disparate lives into alignment. Dawn crept in with a pale blush on the horizon, the convoy stirring before the first light fully broke. Engines growled to life, a symphony of power leashed as they rolled toward the motel, a squat building huddled off the highway, neon sign flickering like a hesitant beacon. The air held the promise of dew-kissed sage, cool against their leathers as they formed a discreet perimeter, bikes idling low to avoid drawing eyes. Ethan dismounted first, boots silent on cracked pavement, approaching the family's door with Noah at his side. A curtain twitched, then the door cracked open, Lucas's mother peering out, her face etched with the night's worries. "They're gone," she whispered, glancing at the shadowed lot. Ethan nodded, his presence a shield. "For now, but this isn't over. The ones behind it, we'll root them out." Lucas peeked from behind her, eyes wide but no longer frightened, the spark of that pull-off moment alive in his grin. "You came back," the boy said, voice small but sure. Ethan knelt, meeting his gaze. "Promised I would. Heroes don't ride alone." The family gathered their things under the oath's watchful circle, loading the sedan with quiet efficiency, the morning light gilding the scene in soft gold. As they pulled out, the convoy escorting at a distance, unseen guardians on the open road, Ethan felt the conspiracy's shadow lengthen. Jax's capture had stirred the hornet's nest. Reports trickled in via comms of deputy movements, frantic calls to higher chains, where corruption festered like untreated wounds. But the oath pressed on, veering toward the county seat, a nondescript town where justice wore a tarnished badge. There, in the heart of the web, they'd confront the source, not with force, but with the unyielding truth Lucas had first voiced. Wrong didn't hide forever. The sun climbed higher, baking the asphalt anew, as the riders cut through sparse traffic, purpose thrumming in their veins. Ethan's mind fixed on the boy, now miles ahead, safe in his parents' care, but forever linked by that yell, a bridge from isolation to brotherhood. Honor, he'd learned, was the road's true currency, spent in acts that echoed beyond the horizon. And as the town loomed, its spires hazy in the heat, the iron oath road-ready, chosen family united, ready to claim the justice that promises demanded. If this chapter's got your heart racing like a Harley on open road, smash that like button below. It helps these stories of quiet courage reach more riders out there. The county seat sprawled under the relentless midday sun like a faded postcard of small-town America, its main street lined with weathered storefronts and a courthouse that squatted in the center, its brick facade cracked like old skin. Ethan Hale eased his Harley to a halt at the edge of town, the engine's low rumble fading into the hum of cicadas and the distant chatter of a lunch crowd spilling from a diner. The Iron Oath crew fanned out behind him, bikes forming a quiet blockade against the curb, leathers absorbing the heat as riders dismounted with the measured grace of men who'd learned caution in harsher arenas. Noah scanned the street, his silver beard catching the light, eyes narrowing at the patrol car parked crookedly outside the sheriff's office, empty, but its presence a silent warning. Dust from their arrival settled in lazy swirls, carrying the faint scent of fried onions and motor oil from the nearby garage. Ethan adjusted his vest, the Iron Oath patch, a bold declaration amid the town's sleepy rhythm. This wasn't a raid, it was a reckoning, born from Lucas's shout and the promises that chained them all. The boy's courage had peeled back the layers of this conspiracy, revealing a rot that festered in badges and backroom deals, preying on the roads where the vulnerable traveled. Ethan's scars itched under his shirt, remnants of a war that taught him trust was earned in blood, not ink. But here, in this sun-baked heartland, the battle was for souls like Lucas's, unscarred and full of light. They moved as a unit toward the courthouse, boots echoing on the sidewalk, the air thick with the buzz of tension. Samuel trailed close, his younger frame taut, whispering, "Eyes everywhere, Ethan. That deputy's holed up. But word's out. We're the ghosts rattling his cage." Ethan nodded, his jaw set like forged iron. The vow to his brother pulsed in his veins. Protect the line no matter the cost. Walking away again would fracture more than the oath. It'd dim the spark Lucas had kindled, proving the cynics right in a world that chewed up honor, like gravel under tires. Inside the courthouse, the lobby smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like trapped flies. A clerk glanced up from her desk, her face paling at the influx of leather-clad figures, but Ethan held up a hand, voice steady as a judge's gavel. "Here for the sheriff. Tell him the road's calling in debts." She hesitated, then buzzed an inner door, the intercom crackling with static before a gruff voice invited them back. The hallway stretched narrow, walls lined with faded portraits of stern-faced predecessors, their eyes seeming to follow as the crew filed in, a procession of quiet resolve. The sheriff's office was a cluttered den, maps pinned to corkboards showing route overlays dotted with cryptic marks, halls, payoffs, territories marked in red. The man himself rose from behind a scarred desk, broad and barrel-chested, his uniform strained at the seams, badge dulled by years of compromise. Flanking him stood the deputy from the canyon, slick hair combed back, his earlier bravado cracked like the retreat in the dust. "Hail," the sheriff rumbled, eyes flicking to the oath's emblems. "You and your road dogs stirring trouble? This town's got laws." Ethan's response was calm, laced with the weight of truths unearthed. "Laws you bend for envelopes in the night. We got your wheelman, Jax. He sang about the roots, the shadows you let slither through." The air thickened, the tick of a wall clock amplifying the standoff. Noah leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his limp a subtle reminder of battles that left deeper marks than this charade. The deputy shifted, sweat beading on his brow, the scent of fear mingling with the room's musty staleness. "Hearsay from a lowlife," he snarled, but his voice wavered, eyes darting to the window where the convoy's bikes gleamed like sentinels. Ethan stepped forward, close enough to see the tremor in the man's hands. "Not hearsay. A boy's life on the line because he saw your game. Lucas, 10 years old, yelling truth while you loosen bolts in the dark. That's the debt we're collecting." Memories flooded Ethan then, unbidden. The foxhole promised to his brother, the earth warm and yielding as he clutched the tags, vowing to shield the innocent from men who twisted justice into chains. The oath had scattered after that loss, fractures mended only by moments like this, loyalty pulling them back, family chosen in the forge of necessity. Samuel's voice cut in from the rear, steady despite his youth. "We ain't here for blood. Hand over the ledgers, the names up the chain. Let the feds clean house, or we ride this story to every diner from here to the border." The sheriff's face hardened, but doubt flickered in his eyes, the web of corruption suddenly fragile under scrutiny. Outside, a siren wailed faintly. Reinforcements or retreat? But inside, the moment stretched taut as a bowstring. The deputy lunged for a draw, hand closing on what might have been a weapon, but Noah was faster. Pinning him with a forearm like rebar, the struggle brief and contained, breaths ragged in the confined space. "Easy," Ethan murmured, his gaze locked on the sheriff. "This ends with you walking away whole, or the oath ensures every promise you broke echoes louder than your badge." Tension crested like a wave, the room's shadows deepening as clouds scudded across the sun outside. The sheriff slumped back into his chair, the fight leaching from him like air from a punctured tire. "It's bigger than me," he admitted, voice hoarse, pulling a key from his pocket and sliding it across the desk toward a locked cabinet. "Start there, but you drag my name through the whole town's poison spills." Ethan pocketed the key, the metal cool against his palm. A tangible piece of the unraveling. No victory cheers, just the quiet satisfaction of threads pulled true, justice not seized, but coaxed from the dark. As they emerged into the sunlight, the crew securing a box of files from the cabinet, ledgers thick with names, routes, payoffs, the air felt lighter, charged with the promise of dawn after storm. Jax, transferred to federal hands via a quick call, would testify. The deputy's web frayed at the edges, but Ethan knew nests like this had stingers, and Lucas's family, now en route home under distant watch, remained a target. Mounting up, the engines ignited in a chorus that shook the street, drawing stares from passers-by who sensed the shift, a town exhaling after holding breath too long. Noah rode beside him as they peeled out, the wind whipping sage-scented gusts. "One thread down, brother," but the boy's yell started a fire. "Burns clean now." Ethan nodded, the horizon stretching endless, the weight of redemption settling like a well-worn jacket. Honor wasn't the absence of shadows, it was riding through them, family at your back, promises lighting the way. The county seat shrank in the mirrors, but the road ahead pulsed with purpose, for Lucas, for the lost brother, for every quiet act that defied the cynical grind. The iron oath thundered on, guardians of the line, one moral mile closer to the light. The engine's thunder softened to a steady growl as the iron oath convoy left the county seat in their dust, the midday sun beating down like a relentless interrogator on the endless stretch of Route 17. Ethan Hale gripped the handlebars tighter, the leather of his gloves creaking against the vibration, the wind slicing through his jacket with a chill that carried the faint metallic aftertaste of the courthouse confrontation. Behind him, Noah rode point on the flank, his bike a dark silhouette against the shimmering heat haze, while Samuel and the others formed the rear guard, eyes scanning the mirrors for any sign of the nest's lingering stings. The box of ledgers, strapped securely to Noah's saddlebag, bumped rhythmically, a cargo of truths that could topple the web Jax had only begun to map. Sagebrush blurred into a green haze at the roadside, its sharp, resinous scent mingling with the exhaust's bite, grounding Ethan in the moment even as his mind raced ahead. The sheriff's key still weighed in his pocket, a cold talisman of surrender, but victory felt fragile, like a wheel nut one twist from disaster. Lucas's face flickered in his thoughts, the boy's wide-eyed grin at the motel, a spark of unscarred hope that mirrored the innocence Ethan had buried with his brother. That yell at the pull-off hadn't just saved a ride, it had reignited the oath's core promise, pulling them from solitary paths into this fray. Redemption rode with them now, not as a distant horizon, but in every mile they claimed against the corruption that twisted the roads into traps. They veered onto a secondary highway, the asphalt cracked and patched like old wounds, flanked by rolling hills dotted with scrub oak that cast fleeting shadows over the pack. Comms crackled softly in Ethan's earpiece, Samuel's voice cutting through. "Clear back here, but that patrol car's ghosting us from 2 miles out. Deputy's not done twitching." Ethan acknowledged with a nod, his jaw setting as he scanned the horizon. The files painted a grim picture, names linked to high-placed officials, routes funneled through blind eyes for contraband that poisoned communities from the inside. It wasn't just bolts loosened, it was lives derailed, families like Lucas's caught in the skid. The oath's code demanded they deliver this to the feds cleanly, no vigilante stains. Proving honor could outlast the grime. As the sun arced toward afternoon, painting the sky in bruised golds, they pulled into a remote rest area, a cluster of weathered picnic tables under sagging pines, the air heavy with the damp earthiness of a nearby creek. Engines cut, leaving a ringing silence broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a raven. Riders dismounted, stretching limbs stiff from the haul, passing water bottles that sloshed cool against parched throats. Noah unloaded the box, spreading ledgers on a table scarred by years of travelers' knives, the pages yellowed and dog-eared, ink faded but damning. "Look at this," he grunted, tracing a route with a calloused finger. "Pull off where the kids saw, marked for clearance. They planned to scatter anyone who lingered." Ethan leaned in, the paper's musty scent rising like unearthed secrets, his blue eyes hardening as connections snapped into place. The deputy wasn't the head. He was a cog, greased by bigger hands, city council whispers, trucking magnates turning a profit on the dark side. Jax's capture had bought them leverage, but the radio crackle at the courthouse hinted at feds closing in, drawn by anonymous tips the oath had seeded through secure channels. Yet doubt gnawed. What if the rot reached those investigators too? Samuel paced the gravel, his boots crunching softly, youth etching worry lines on his face. We hand this off blind, and Lucas's family stays a target. That yell of his, it's on us to make it count. The group fell into a huddle, voices low and measured, the pine needles whispering overhead like conspirators. Ethan straightened, the weight of leadership settling like his brother's old dog tags, tucked against his chest. We ride to the border checkpoint. Neutral ground, feds waiting, escort the files ourselves, eyes open. Murmurs of agreement rippled, the fire of shared purpose kindling in their stares. These men, scattered by life's cruelties, lost jobs, shattered homes, wars that took more than limbs, had found anchor in the oath. Loyalty wasn't a word, it was the throttle twist that kept them moving, family woven from threads of quiet sacrifice. Ethan clapped Samuel's shoulder, the gesture firm. You saw it first in those ledgers. The pull-off mark, like the boy you called it. That's why we hold. As they repacked, a low rumble echoed from the east. Not thunder, but engines. 3 black SUVs cresting the hill like predators scenting blood. Dust billowed in their wake, the air thickening with tension as they braked hard, doors slamming to reveal suited figures. Deputies' allies, faces twisted in desperate fury. "Hail! Those files stay here!" The lead man barked, hand dipping toward a concealed holster, his voice carrying the hollow ring of cornered authority. The oath formed up instinctively, a wall of leathers and resolve, no weapons drawn, but stances unyielding. Noah stepped forward, limp be damned, his presence a boulder in the stream. "Roads open! Walk away, or the feds get a live show of your desperation." The standoff stretched, the creek's murmur the only soundtrack, sun glinting off windshields like false halos. Ethan met the leader's gaze, unflinching, the wind tugging at his jacket as if urging restraint. This ends now. For the kid who spoke truth, for every promise you shattered chasing shadows, hand over your badges, or the ledgers name you all. A beat, then hesitation fractured their line, one suit glancing back, whispering urgently into a phone. The radio in the lead SUV squawked, feds' voices cutting through. "Stand down, evidence secured, warrants incoming." Faces paled, the bluff evaporating like morning dew, vehicles reversing in a spray of gravel, tails between legs. Relief washed through the crew, subtle as a shared nod, the pines sighing in approval. Ethan mounted up, the Harley's kickstart roaring to life, a vow fulfilled in the open air. They rolled out renewed, the border checkpoint, a beacon 30 miles west, where justice would finally clamp down. Lucas's family, pinged safe en route home, carried a piece of this, a tale of courage that bridged strangers into kin. As hills gave way to flat expanses, Ethan felt the scars ease, redemption not a solitary ride, but a convoy's steady hum. The road twisted on, but the oath's light cut true, honor claimed, shadows fleeing, one ethical turn at a time. Noah pulled alongside, the wind whipping their words. Boys' yell echoes louder than any engine. We did right by it. Ethan grinned faintly, the horizon calling. Stars would crown their delivery, promises enduring under the vast night sky. The border checkpoint loomed like a sentinel at the edge of the world, its floodlights piercing the encroaching dusk with harsh white beams that cut through the swirling dust devils. Ethan Hale throttled down as the Iron Oath convoy approached, the Harley's growl softening to a wary purr, tires humming over the grated metal barrier that marked the line between shadowed roads and reluctant accountability. The air hung heavy with the salt tang of distant ocean spray, mixed with the acrid bite of checkpoint diesel generators. a far cry from the sage-scented isolation they'd left behind. Behind him, Noah's bike flanked close, the box of ledgers secured like a sacred relic. While Samuel and the rest held formation, their leathers dusted pale by the long haul, faces etched with the quiet vigilance of men who'd stared down worse horizons. Federal agents waited in a cluster near the guard shack, crisp suits and stern expressions under the glare of portable lamps, radios crackling with clipped updates that echoed faintly across the asphalt. Ethan killed the engine first, the sudden silence amplifying the creak of cooling pipes and the soft shuffle of boots on gravel. He dismounted with a nod to his crew, the weight of the day's unraveling settling in his shoulders like an old rucksack. Lucas's yell replayed in his mind, that child's voice a clarion call, slicing through the pull-off's haze, binding this disparate pack to a purpose deeper than revenge. The boy's courage had cracked the conspiracy wide, exposing the deputy's web of payoffs and tampered routes, but closure demanded delivery. Truth handed over clean, no blood on the oath's hands. An agent stepped forward, a woman with sharp eyes and a badge that gleamed authentic, her hand extended in a gesture more command than welcome. "Hale, we've got your tip. Files." Ethan's response was measured, pulling the box from Noah's saddlebag with a metallic scrape, the ledger's edges worn from frantic flips in the rest area's pines. All here, names, routes, the works. Starts with a loose wheel at a trading post, ends with shadows preying on open roads. She flipped open the top, scanning pages under the lamp's glow, her face hardening as connections lit up like fuse trails. This ties to 3 states, deputies already in cuffs back in the county. You're doing? Noah grunted from the flank, his limp shifting as he crossed arms. A boy's doing. He saw the wrench, yelled it out. We just rode the echo. The exchange unfolded under the checkpoint's unblinking eyes, agents swarming the box with gloved hands, flash drives whirring as data transferred in the cool evening breeze that carried hints of eucalyptus from beyond the line. Ethan watched, the scene unfolding like a slow pan in some redemption reel, leathers against suits, road warriors yielding to the system's gears, but on their terms. Memories tugged at him, the grave's soft earth, his brother's tags warm in his fist, the vow to guard the innocent against men who twisted justice into nooses. The iron oath had fractured under that loss, brothers scattering like spent casings. But Lucas's act had welded them anew, family not born of blood, but chosen in the fire of quiet stands. Loyalty, a chain they forged link by link. Samuel edged closer, his voice low amid the agent's murmurs. They'll bury the deputy deep. But what about the kid? His folks pinged safe, but echoes linger. Ethan clapped his shoulder, the gesture firm as the oath patch on his vest. We'll shadow them home, unseen. The yell brought more than a crash avoided. It lit the path. The lead agent nodded approval, her radio buzzing with confirmations from the county, arrests rippling outward, trucking bosses sweating under spotlights, the web fraying into indictments. No grand takedown here, just the steady grind of accountability, poetic in its restraint. Justice not roared, but claimed through persistence, the moral weight of one child's truth, toppling giants built on lies. As the agents secured the evidence, loading it into an unmarked van with tires that whispered over the barrier, the convoy reformed under the stars, now fully unfurled like a velvet canopy. Engines ignited in staggered roars, a farewell thunder that rolled across the checkpoint, drawing nods from the guards who'd seen enough tales to recognize this one. Ethan mounted up last, the Harley's seat warm from the day's ride, his scars a faint itch under the cooling night. Redemption wasn't a finish line. It was this endless stretch, promises enduring like the road itself, winding through losses and into light. They'd escort Lucas's family the final leg at dawn, a silent vigil ensuring the shadows stayed buried, the boy's spark safe to grow. The pack rolled out into the twilight, headlights carving golden tunnels through the dark, the wind whipping sage and salt into a cleansing rush. Noah pulled abreast, his silver beard trailing like a comet's tail. Oath holds, brother, for the kid, for all the forgotten yells. Ethan nodded, throttle steady, the horizon a promise of open miles. Honor rode with them, unyielding as the stars, family chosen, justice moral, the quiet courage of one shout, echoing eternal. If these tales of road-worn promises have touched your soul, drop a subscription and hit the bell. We'd be honored to have you ride along for more stories of redemption and unbreakable bonds.